I would say it's kind of mid-stiff. It's definitely on the stiffer end of mid-stiff, or is it? It's kind of stiffish. Stiffish, who knows? It's probably around a 7, but those ratings kind of mean nothing. Stiffish, I'm gonna start again, that's terrible. Oh yeah, tasty. So, this is going to be my review of the NIDECKER ESCAPE. Now, I actually filmed this review a couple of months ago, early season, whilst I was up in Saas-Fee, but I wanted to hold off from posting it for a little while, just to kind of get a bit more of a feel for it and see if my opinion, any of the things that I said then, changed. Check these dogs out. Essentially nothing has changed. I've since ridden it in a bit of powder, which I hadn't at the time. It definitely works in the powder. I don't really film when it's powder days. I like to have some fun. But there's one other thing that I wanted to let you guys know as well, and that is that since filming the video, I've actually ended up getting an affiliate link for NIDECKER. So if you go through that link and buy anything, I will make a small commission. It hasn't really affected anything that I've said, and in fact I've even filmed everything like I mentioned before I even got that affiliate link. But just to be transparent, so you know, I will make money if you use my link and buy this board. Cool, all right, now let's roll the review. We are up here on the Saas-Fee Glacier, and I've got to tell you, this place is absolutely incredible. We're just surrounded by so much ice, it is awesome. And I would really recommend this as a good place to come to make some turns, especially if you want to get some early season riding in. It's mid-November right now, and we spent the last couple of days up here, and I've been getting to know this fella. But as you can see, the clouds, they are starting to roll in, so I'm going to take a few minutes off and share with you my thoughts on this board. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not a guy who really gets into loads of board reviews. I don't ride hundreds of boards. So if you're looking for someone who can kind of accurately compare this to other boards on the market, then maybe check out the Angry Snowboarder. I don't really know how he does it, but he seems to ride pretty much every single snowboard under the sun every season. However, if you're interested in my opinion and what made me choose this board as a board that I'm going to really ride throughout the entire season, then stick around. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a big fan of volume shifted boards. I had the Ride Warpig, the Salomon Dance Hall, and I've now just got the Yes Walker as well, so I'll probably review that at some point later in the season. But what those boards do is they shorten the length and basically increase the width underfoot. And the reason that appealed to me is because if you've got big feet, there's nothing worse than having your toes sticking out over the edge of the board, because basically when you put the board on a high edge angle, like when you're Euro carving or riding steeps, you're going to boot out. If you're not really sure what I'm talking about there, then check out my video, Do You Need a Wide Board, which I'll put in the description down below, which basically talks about why you might need a wide board, particularly if you have slightly larger feet. Now, this isn't a volume shifted board. As you can see, it looks more like a traditional snowboard, but there's two words in the name of this board that really appealed to me. This is the Escape, but it is the 162 extra wide. Those two letters right there, XW, ooh, that got me interested. So that extra wide translates to 272 millimeters across the waist right there, which makes this an awesome board for guys with big feet. And for me, it means no booting out on Euro carves. However, this board does come in a whole range of sizes. So if you have big feet, great, good to know it's there. But if you don't, the rest of this review will be relevant for you as well, because you might find yourself getting on a smaller size version of this. Now, where would we see this board? What kind of category does it fit into? Well, on the website, and I would agree exactly, that it fits in the all mountain category. That means it should be good riding a bit of powder, a bit of off-piste, steep slopes, carving on mellow slopes, and really this board excels in all those things. And that's where I kind of see my riding as well. I like to be able to go everywhere and do everything. So let's talk about carving, because who doesn't love to carve? It's one of my favorite things to do, and on this board you can definitely do it. So NIDECKER boards have a bit of a reputation as being good for carving, and this one does not disappoint. Put it on its edge and it just really wants to go. It has a cam rock profile, so that means camber kind of between the feet here and here, and then a bit of early rise rocker that extends out at the tip and the tail. Now you might be thinking a full camber board would be better at carving, and yeah, a full camber version of this probably is slightly better at carving, and you have the Escape Plus if that's more what you're looking at, but this doesn't disappoint. You potentially at the end of a carve have to kind of actively shift a little bit more pressure out with the back knee towards the back end just to stop that cam rock section in the tail washing out, but it's really, really minor. I would say this doesn't feel like your average kind of cam rock board that can be quite wishy-washy. This thing really grips and you can carve really, really hard on it. It's got a kind of mid-stiffish flex. It's not the stiffest board I've ever ridden, but it's definitely no noodle of a park board. But what's really nice about this board is it has torsional flex. And what that means is that, so let me just explain quickly. You have the kind of stiffness of the board through the middle here, if I was to bend it like a banana. But also, if you imagine my feet are in the bindings, if I want to steer kind of properly for those tighter turns, using my knees and ankles, you kind of twist the board through the middle like a ribbon. And this board really allows you to torsional twist it, which is something that I love. So despite this being a big 162 extra wide and a bit of a carving machine, it's still nimble enough that I can use my ankles and my knees to steer with it and pull it round in tight turns as well. You know, ideal for when you're coming down those steeper slopes and you want to just bring your turns into that narrower corridor. Pop. What kind of pop does this board have? Now, there's a couple of things people usually mean when they're talking about pop. Firstly, there's the kind of pop you're going to get out of the tail and out of the nose when you're doing ollies, nollies, butters, those kind of things. And this board, it definitely kind of stiffens up as we get through to the back end. That's what kind of helps with the carving, helps you to kind of drive it through the end of the turn. But it also makes it really poppy for ollies off the tail. And because of the kind of cam rock profile, it's not the easiest board to do it, but it does help with getting into those butters and those presses, and then it kind of snaps you out of those, pops you out of those as well. Now, the second type of pop that people talk about, pop out of turns. Now, actually, when I used to hear people say, oh, this board has really good pop out of turns, I didn't really know what they meant. But what they mean is, when you're kind of pushing a board through the turn, you're essentially pushing against it like that, kind of bending it like a banana, the opposite from the camber profile that it usually sits in. So you go through a turn, you push it out like that, and then when you kind of get up to make the edge change, you release that pressure, pop, the board pops back and it releases all that pressure. And this board really has a lot of pop. Thanks to that camber that sits between the feet, it is really going to snap you out of one turn into the next. It's a really fun, lively feeling. What else? Well, it's got a decent base, it definitely goes pretty fast, it's got some solid construction, and I'm not going to nerd out on all those things. If you want to see exactly what's going on inside the board, check out on their website. I'll put a link down below. So you heard me mention the Escape Plus, and you might be wondering why I didn't go for that board. What's the difference between the two? Well, basically the Escape Plus takes this cam rock profile out and makes it full camber. It upgrades the base. This has what's called an N7000 base. That has an N9000 base. I can tell you this one's pretty fast, but I guess that one is going to be even faster. And I think it adds a little bit of stiffness too. Now, the main reason, to be honest, I didn't go for the Escape Plus is simply because it doesn't come in an extra wide version. This one, I've got the 162 extra wide, and that doesn't exist yet. Who knows, maybe it is coming, but I couldn't get the 162 extra wide in the Escape Plus. Now, the differences between the two with how they're gonna ride, because the Escape Plus has the full camber, I'd say that's where you're gonna find the biggest difference. When you make your edge change, when you go into your turn, that full camber is gonna kind of bite straight away, and it's going to want to pull you into the turn, which some riders can find a little bit intimidating. You won't get that so much on the Escape, on the regular version, because of that cam rock profile. You can be a little bit lazier with your turns, say. You could also get away with a couple of bad habits. So on one hand, it's also going to be a bit more approachable for some riders, but it doesn't mean it's weak or wishy-washy. If you do get your weight in the right place, you can really still be aggressive with this board and it will still pull you into turns. But for me, that cam rock is also going to give you a few advantages as well. I think it just makes this board a little bit more fun. It's going to make getting on your nose and on your tail for those butters a bit easier. It's going to feel a little bit more surfy, great for riding the slush, but also it's going to be super good when you're getting in the powder. That rock is just going to lift you up and aid a little bit more. Now, this board is going to be no slouch in the powder. I haven't really had a chance to do it yet. We've got a little bit of wind-blown snow on the side that I kind of went through, but it's going to be good simply because, I mean, look at the size of it. It's a 162 extra wide. It's massive, and I quite like the idea this season of after having ridden loads, getting tongue-tied there, after having ridden loads of these volume-shifted boards, I quite like the idea of moving back to a big sort of traditional board. I was watching the Natural Selection last season, and Mikkel Bang, he rides a massive board, like a 164 or something. I was like, if he can do it, why can't I? And so far, it's really been a blast. So you don't necessarily need to go that big. As I mentioned, there's heaps of sizes within this board. But if you see yourself as the kind of rider who really likes to attack all the mountain, be able to cruise when you want to, but especially loves carving, riding steeps, off-piste powder, you can go into the park on this thing. I've hit a couple of rails with it, but it's not my forte, and it's not really this board's forte too. So it's like you might do a little bit of park, a few jumps. You can definitely boost it on this thing. It does have pop, but if you're after a park board, go for a park board. So let me wrap it up because I'm waffling on, baby. Epical mountain board, get the Escape. Done.